and welcome to the edition of Blockleaders podcast with me, Gillian Gotzel. And today I'm delighted to have as my guest Gal Sagie, who is the co-founder and CEO of Hypernative. Gal, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Gillian. Great to be here.
No, I'm delighted. So tell me a bit about your background. You're a very techie man. I think that's accurate to say. Tell me about your career to date before we get to the Hypernatives we'll talk about. Tell me how you got to this point.
Yeah, so my background varies between a lot of roles in the cybersecurity space and cloud infrastructure. I had a previous startup that I sold to IBM and then served as CTO of IBM Cloud. That startup is today basically what is IBM Cloud Solution for a lot of customers. I also worked at Google, VMware, Intel, and a variety of other companies, all in technical and product roles.
Okay. And you referenced that you worked for all the top companies and your focus is security. So I think that probably leads you to the Hypernative. What was the biggest issue, especially facing Web3, that you came across?
Yeah, I think when you look at Web3, one of the biggest challenges and problems today in the space, and what myself and my co-founder believe is the one that it's keeping them from really mass adoption is security, right? People getting phished and scammed, projects getting hacked in the billions of dollars, because it's also an easy target and a very lucrative target for bad actors. And we believe that solving this problem is a fundamental component in Web3. And this is why we started Hypernative at mid 2022 to basically solve that problem.
And I think the part of the example that you might give, like in Web2, like the whole virus issue has been contained now, hasn't it? Wouldn't you say it's mostly people used to be scared of viruses, and now they're mostly people not. All the software comes with built-in security and stuff like that. But Web3 doesn't have that. And you can't do an audit on a smart contract and stop everything. So what were the main issues facing security in Web3?
Yeah, I think that what we saw in 2022, and it changed quite a bit in the 2 years that we are operating, and that people didn't really have, like, everything was reactive after the fact, or like very basic, like audits and things that are pre-deployment. And there wasn't really a platform that know to monitor and detect risk in a variety of different vectors, and then help you to automatically react, right? So there was this, I think one of the biggest stories was around this Axie Infinity hack, which people didn't notice, like $500 million was stolen, and people didn't notice it for 6 days, right? Which is something that you don't see at other industries, right? And a lot of it, people are managing huge amounts of funds, and they don't have anything that checks that things are okay. And this is what we set to build, basically, right? A component that knows to monitor and detect risk, and then help you to react to that, either manually or preferably automatically, and prevent that risk.
So I think it's said that the odds are all in favor of the attacker because he only has to get it right once, but the defender has to be successful every time. It's not there is no option not to be successful. So tell me then, in terms of building the software, sorry, you recognize that it needs to be continuous real-time monitoring of it's a blockchain, a protocol, a platform. So how do you implement that, and what existed before? Was it just like bounty hunters and once-off audits? What existed before you came along?
Yeah, so I think the best in the market was you done an audit, usually a few audits for the protocol from sometimes different providers, and then a bug bounty program for the more advanced ones. But this was it, like there wasn't anything else. And I think that what we observed is that blockchains have a very unique capability that actually gave a lot of advantage to attackers because a lot of the things are open, right? Like you see the code, you can decompile it, you see how everything is operating, you see the transaction and the behaviors, you are able to react to that. So there is this very open visibility of like your target. And it's in the end, it's much easier, right, to conduct and think about an attack in these kind of scenarios. And what we took at Hypernative is we basically took that advantage that everything is open and actually used this as an advantage for defending because now what we are doing is we're able to basically find and detect the attacker before they deploy an attack because
Also, if it's open for the defender, it's open for the attacker too as well. Okay, clever. You're turning yes, excellent. Sorry, I interrupted you. Keep on going.
No, and this is what exactly what we realized, right? That in order to do an attack, you also need to do all sorts of preparation and actions that you want. And in blockchains, because it's not connected to anything outside of the blockchain itself, you need to do it on chain essentially. So you are basically visible to a very smart modeling or monitoring platform. And we took that advantage and we classified what are the different patterns that an attack looks like, and then we generalize it using machine learning and very advanced mechanism to basically detect all the different kind of attacks that can happen to you, even if you don't know what is the vector of the attack that is happening. And I think this is very different than audit because when you think about it, a lot of vectors are not covered today by audit. So even if you say, okay, we've done a perfect audit, you can still get hacked in a variety of different vectors, which monitoring and reaction is actually addressing today.
Okay, so reading your documentation, there's three things to stop the breaches before they happen. You have the Hypernative platform, Hypernative security oracle, and the Hypernative screener. Can we go through those three things, please? So beginning with the platform.
Yeah, so the idea of the idea of the platform and the platform has a different kind of capabilities to actually prevent hacks and exploit, where the idea is that we know to detect these hacks before they happen in a very indicative signals that we have, either by the way, generic signals or things that are specific to your protocol or the way that you do things. And then you want to trigger something on chain. And you can trigger a transaction, you can integrate with an SDK that you use, you can have manual intervention of basically alert to your team or to Hypernative team, and we help you address it. It really depends on the protocol and what type and deepness of integration they want. They're also able to do that in a very permissionless way because they give the platform permission just to run a specific emergency transaction on their behalf and control how is it triggered. The Oracle component that you mentioned is essentially our on-chain interaction, which you can basically integrate on-chain with Hypernative and then inline stop attacks as they are happening in the same manner. The screener is something a bit different that is not really related to attacks and exploit, but it helps you understand your participants and wallets that are interacting with you and are they involved in previous hacks or exploit, or basically get an overview about the participants and the people that are interacting with the protocol.
So I was reading also some more in your documentation where your success rate is, it's huge. It's 99.5% of all hacks are detected with less than a 0.0015% false positive. So
Yeah.
could you just explain that a little bit and how you came by those figures?
Yeah, so we done a very extensive research. Obviously, from the start that Hypernative was created, we by the way ran historically, like we ran from Genesis the entire Ethereum history, and just saw how the system actually behave on all the historical hacks and exploit that we knew. The interesting thing there was that when we ran it, we actually found out 4 times the hexen exploit that we knew of. And then we thought, okay, it must be a mistake. The platform has done some errors, and we started to check them one by one, which was a very long and tedious process of a security researcher that looks at them. And then we found out that a lot of the hexen exploit weren't historically disclosed, and this is why they weren't in any like Twitter or web page or mentioned anywhere. So we focus a lot on monitoring and understanding how the system behaves and making sure that it behaves correctly. And these numbers are led from that research over the last year and a half. We basically detected almost all the hexen exploit that we know of and were published. And in very large percentage of these cases, by the way, around 98 plus, we are able to detect them few minutes before the first tech transaction, which means they are essentially preventable if you have something you can do about it.
So that's a huge number of hacks that were never reported or noticed, perhaps even maybe they were, or this, not reported maybe is the best way to say it. Okay, so then tell me, how many chains do you work with?
So we work with a few chains. Today, Hypernative as a platform support around 30 chains
Wow.
today. Mostly EVM, including Starknet, Say Network, and Solana. And yeah, we are working. We have 3 types of customers today for Hypernative, mostly chains, layer 2 or layer 1s, big protocols that are part of Hypernative customer list, and big asset managers, institutionals, anyone that investing and interacting with DeFi and on-chain.
So do you give me an idea of the size of your company now? So it's been going 2 years? No, 4 years, sorry, 2020, 4 years.
Oh, no, we started at 2022, so 2
Beg your
years.
pardon, sorry. Give me an idea of the size of your company, please.
So we are 26 people today. We are growing. So we're going to get bigger in the next few months. And we are working today with more than 100 customers in our portfolio.
Okay. You're also working with Flare Networks. Can you describe how that came about and what you're doing with them? And is that indicative of other work you do with other chains as well?
Yeah, yeah. So I met Hugo and Gabe. We've been in contact for some time now. We've discussed, shared ideas. Our model with Flare, I think we found a very like-minded people that really care about technology and making things right. And one of the most important thing for the Flare team was to make sure that the entire ecosystem is safe. Like, of course, Flare itself, the infrastructure, and how is it run. But not only that, to basically help anyone else that is building on top of Flare get protected. And this is what we are doing essentially in Hypernative. We are allowing any protocol that is building on top of Flare get that extra protection and integration from Hypernative. A lot of time projects in that, like when they are starting, they don't have enough time or budget to invest in security persons, of course, in a team. They don't have the measures to really think about security from all the different angles, right? Like they're focused on building their use case and their value. And we are essentially augmenting that security, right? We are providing Hypernative, which provide to them that end-to-end protection, and then help them configure and use the system and basically be that security partner for them, which again, I think is a tremendous thing to do for the entire ecosystem. And I'm
You're
really
right. So it's actually it's interesting that the founders of the ecosystem, the protocol, are concerned for the people working on the platform, that they're going to make it easier for them. You're right. Startups that are building stuff don't necessarily have to have cryptographers or to have security guys there as well. Okay, that's pretty cool. So going forward, then, do you think what does your roadmap look like? Will you become ubiquitous?
So I think Hypernative today is the market leader in what we do, both from the technology side and the adoption side. We are planning to expand to, of course, provide more value with the platform today, address more kind of like different type of risks than we are covering today. Let you actually customize the risk that you want to use on top of the platform, and address new verticals and new type of customers in the industry, because we created Hypernative to protect anyone that's interacting in the space. And we want to get there and be that like risk DNA across all the different participants in the system. So
I love it. I
very
love the fact that you're kind of poacher turned gamer, or gamer turned poacher, where the secret sauce for the attacker is you're saying, we can use that too, because we can see what you guys are doing when you're building up for the attack. It's very, very clever. It's thinking, it's getting inside the mind of the would-be attacker. And
thank you.
thank you very much, Gal. I really appreciate your time. So you're in Web3 now. You're gonna be in Web 4, 5, 6. Whatever.
We still have a lot of work on Web3. So
Okay. Okay. I won't rush you too much then. Okay. Thank you so much for your time today, Gal. It was very interesting and very innovative thinking, and then implementation. Thank you very much indeed.
thank you. It was great to be here.